I want to welcome Mr. Matt Talford to my show. He's the award-winning author of 3 books, From Fear to Faith, A Survivor Story, Stuck in the Elevator, and Captain's Mate. Man, I want to thank you for allowing me to come here to interview you. And obviously, I want to talk to you about success and pick your brain a little bit, how you've gone from where you were to where you are now. And I know you're involved in a lot of stuff. So we're just going to talk about that in hopes to, well, not hopes, but we know it's going to motivate someone to get out there and, do something for themselves that they may have always wanted to do.
Absolutely.
So again, man, I want to welcome you to my show.
Joe, thank you. Thank you for having me. To me, I just get tickled anytime somebody wants to talk to me because, I'm as regular can get. So thank you.
Well, let me ask you this. Your book, From Fear to Faith, A Survivor Story. What motivated you to write that book?
Joe, that's a great question. So back in 2010, I started feeling these symptoms that I wouldn't even call them symptoms. I just was experiencing something in my body that didn't quite feel right. And in the early stages, it just felt like I was running out of stamina on the tennis court. As you may know, I'm a big tennis enthusiast, and I was spending quite a bit of time on the court. Been playing tennis since 2002. And at this point, 8 years into the future, I hit a spot where I'm like, okay, I shouldn't be that tired, but I figured maybe it had something to do with the jet lag because I worked at a international software corporation and had clients as far as Hawaii. So I figured, okay, maybe I'm spending too much time in a plane and jet lag or whatever. And that ended up turning into it got severe. It progressed from being, just a situation where I was like, okay, I'm kind of tired where I shouldn't be, to me not being able to walk up one flight of stairs to the second floor of my building without stopping to catch my breath and massage my legs because they hurt. So at my lowest point, I just could not even play 2 games of tennis without stopping to sit down on the ground. And I just said, and some of this is in the book, but I just said to myself, something's not right. And I ended up going to the doctor, and through a series of tests and different things, not only did I find out I was anemic and was losing blood in my gut, it turned out to be the dreaded C word, or cancer. And at that time, I said to myself, you know what? Everything I've been through in my life has been leading me up to this point. I'm supposed to do something with this. This wasn't put here to end me. I got to do something. I was chosen. I felt like I was chosen for that, to help somebody else that might experience something similar and feel afraid, to show them that, hey, you know what? You can get through this. So my inspiration for getting through it was being able to share the story with someone else so that they could get through it too.
And did you write before that, or what got you into becoming an author?
Joe, I love that question. A lot of people ask me that, and when they look at the book and look at how it came across and how that story was presented, people ask me, they're like, wow, this is your first outing. And the truth is, I had been trying to write. I started writing and journaling when I was in the Army at the age of 17. I said, I want to write a book one day, because I was a kid who, I didn't play a lot of sports early on in my life. Even though I played pickup sports in the neighborhood, stickball in New York and playing pickup games of basketball and 2-hand touch football and in the street and such. I wasn't in team sports until later in life. So when the other kids were going to baseball practice and football practice, I was going to the library, and I spent a lot of time reading books. And I knew one day that I wanted to be a writer, and I just always had a natural propensity for it. When we would take the state standardized test for school, in the South they call it the CTBS, and it's been so long in New York I don't remember what it was called, but these are the state tests for math, writing, and I believe it was math, science, and writing or something like that. It's been a while. I always aced the writing part. Always got a max score on the writing part. So I knew that there was a writer in there somewhere, and I started trying to write after age 17 in the Army, and I just said, you know what, one day I'm going to have a book to write. And I had like 4 or 5 manuscripts where I started and finished. From Fear to Faith, A Survivor Story, or my experience from 2010 to 2011 became the catalyst for me to finish something. So.
Gotcha.
I know I took you all the way around the block there.
Oh, so. That's good. When you started writing and you made that decision to write and you started writing your first book, how many hours would you say you spent on, developing the idea, creating everything? How many hours would you say that you spent per day, per week, writing this book?
From Fear to Faith.
Fear to Faith.
Okay. I tell people that I wrote my book in 20 minutes. And they say, no, there's no way you wrote that in 20 minutes. And literally, I didn't write all 300 plus pages in 20 minutes. But the thing is, I tell people, and I'm giving away some of my secrets here, I finished the framework for the book in 20 minutes. And so once you finish the framework, it's like a house. Once you're done drawing the plans and getting the building materials, you're just putting it together. So how much time is it going to take you to put it together? For me, what started as me writing when I could, because I started drafting it while I was still an employee in corporate America. And I just, with my job, and I don't mind saying the company I worked for, I was at Microsoft. I was a technical account manager at Microsoft. And with the workload I had at Microsoft, I just came to a point where I said, you know what, there's no way I can finish this book in a timely fashion and keep this job, because I'm more focused on the job. So I made a decision later that year. I started writing it in January 2013. And in October, I made the decision to just walk away from it and just go full-time author. So it wasn't a matter of hours during the day, Joe. It was just a matter of when did inspiration hit me. I knew I wanted to write, but I'm one of these people that there are a lot of authors out there that I envy, because they say, hey, they treat it like it's training. They say, or treat it like it's an exercise, or they're training like Floyd Mayweather would. Floyd Mayweather, when he was fighting, he would go to the gym 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. And these people, they write from between 4 hours a day to 6 hours a day. They're like, oh, if you want to be a successful writer, this has got to be your job. This is the way you got to do it. I never subscribed to that. I'm like, if I don't feel like writing, I'm just going to be sitting there looking at a blank page. So it varied, Joe. It varied. It varied. But all in all, it took me from start to finish, where it was ready to publish, it took me about 2 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And did you experience any fears, or do you have any, what was your greatest fear when you decided to write your book, or did you have any at all? And if so, how did you manage that fear?
This is going to sound crazy, but my biggest fear was procrastination. Because anytime you're writing a memoir, what happens is, especially when you're writing something that's based around a life event, the further you get away from that event period, the more those details start to get a little bit sketchy. And I'll be honest with you, there was a section in the book where I was afraid that I had the date wrong. Now, some people say that's anal, but I'm like, well, I'm not writing a fiction book. This is historically accurate here, so I need to get these dates and times right. And what ended up happening was, as I'm drafting this book, I went back to the journal that I was keeping while I was going through the actual interviews with the doctors and everything. And that helped me to properly align the dates in the manuscript. So that's crazy, but that was my biggest fear was procrastination and getting further and further away from that event to where I was forgetting details that I felt like might be significant to somebody. So that was my biggest fear. Right.
And obviously there's going to be a lot of wannabe or would-be authors that are out there that's watching your interview. Mm-hmm. And to help them a little bit more, were there any mistakes that you wish you could have avoided when you decided to write your book, or did you have any mistakes that...
Not in the writing part, Joe. The writing part for me is strange. The writing part was kind of cathartic. It was kind of therapeutic, because when you're going through a traumatic experience, like dealing with what I call on the rear cover copy, the rear cover of the book, the writing on the rear cover, a ticking time bomb being inside your body. You don't know when that thing might explode and end your days. I experienced this release of emotion that I didn't get to experience when I was going through it, because when you're going through something traumatic, you just like, your focus is on getting through it. So as far as like mistakes go, I was so thorough in following my detailed map that I put out for the book, or my framework, that I don't feel like I made any mistakes in the drafting part.
It just fell into place.
It fell into place.
Right.
It fell into place. And so for any authors out there that are watching, I would tell them, believe in your plan, believe in your framework, make sure that you get the framework for that book right up front. And if you get it, let all of your effort go into getting that framework the way you want it, because then everything else just falls into place.
Right, I got you. I totally understand that. You know how we all have in business or anything that we want to do, mm-hmm. we have these naysayers out there. Mm-hmm. Did you ever experience any of that, whether it may have come from family, friends, did you have any naysayers saying that, oh man, why you want to write a book? Or, you can't become an author, you don't know, did you ever experience anything like that? To maybe help someone that may be facing something like that, wanting to, maybe write a book?
Yeah. I had a few. And believe it or not, they weren't people that were other writers per se, but they were people that were publishing industry employees and higher up executives in the publishing industry. And they were saying, what makes you think you can be a successful writer? Everybody thinks they can be successful.
Right.
What makes you think that you can be successful? And so when someone issues me a challenge like that, it actually motivates me. And the naysayers, I feel like, help to fuel you forward. If you're not a person that, wilts when somebody says you can't. So you can either wilt and go into a shell or a bubble when someone says you can't do something, or you can use it as fuel to jettison you toward your end goal. So those were the naysayers. The naysayers weren't really people that were in my corner. They were people, a lot of people didn't even know I was writing a book, to be honest, Joe.
Right.
A lot of the people that I went to in doing my research for what comes next when my draft is finished, they're like, don't expect anything out of this.
Gotcha.
So it's like, okay.
Right. It happens.
It does. It does.
Definitely happened. And was Stuck in the Elevator your second book, or was that your third? Which came first?
Stuck in an Elevator was third. So I dropped another book in between there called Captain's Mate, which was a book that I wrote for the tennis community. It's a book that deals with, things that are germane to the captaining experience and the USTA adult league tennis. There are also some nuggets in there that high school coaches, because high school tennis coaches are some of the most under celebrated coaches in sports. So I'm like, okay, they don't get a lot of the funding that the football and the basketball people get. So I was like, let me get this book out of the way. And then came Stuck in an Elevator 2 years later. And there's a story that comes with Stuck in an Elevator. But I won an award for Stuck in an Elevator as well. And it was my third book. I feel like you might want to ask me something else, so I'm going to pull back a little bit.
Well, I just want to pick your brain about it. When writing the next two books, I know the Stuck in the Elevator was your third one. What advice would you give someone? Let's say they've gone through their first book, and you may have learned through whatever mistakes, if you made them or not. What advice would you give someone writing their second and third book like you have?
The advice I would give them is learn from that whole experience of writing the first one. Learn from it. What went well? Write that stuff down. Write down everything that went well in your process and repeat that. Things that didn't go so well, write those down and don't do those same things again. The more you finish projects, the easier it becomes to finish them. When I finished From Fear to Faith, a Survivor Story, it literally took a lot out of me. That was my first book. That was my debut into the marketplace. And, I had these dreams. I knew I could write. And I looked at some of the books out there that were popular. And at the time that I was working on my book, E.L. James was the hottest name out there with the whole Christian Grey and 50 Shades of Grey thing. And, I was looking at it and looking at the story. I'm like, okay. When you're a competitive person, you want to find that benchmark, and you don't want to sound pompous like, okay, I know I can write better than that. But there's a part of you that's a competitor that says, I can write better than that. Exactly. And I was really comparing apples to oranges because she was a fiction writer and I'm nonfiction, but storytelling is the same nonetheless. Right. So I'm like, I know I can craft a story that's a little bit more captivating, but then you hit this wall because you realize that you don't have millions of dollars or thousands or whatever they allocate to these big time publishing companies allocate to pushing this person out there. And you're like, okay, so maybe I'm not $1 million author right now, so.
You will be.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Will be. So and Joe, I got this habit. I won't call it a bad habit, but I got a habit of you're saying, hey Matt, walk me to the house next door, and I'll take you all the way around the block to get you to the house next door. So sometimes I give these extended answers, but I think that's germane to being a writer. You give a lot of information and then you peel back what doesn't work and that sort of thing. But yeah, so that was the deal with those two. I would tell you, write down what works. Keep that, throw out what doesn't work, and just keep going. I saw there was a line from a series I saw called I can't remember. It was a Showtime series. I can't think of the name, escapes me. But this guy, he's an author in there, and I also like to watch TV shows where people are authors because I want to see what other writers are saying that the writer's life is like. Because everything is based on reality. Fiction, all that stuff's based on somebody's reality or somebody's imagination. So I said, let me watch these, and I'm watching this Showtime series, and this guy who just published his first book, he goes and He meets his girlfriend / fiance's father, who's this accomplished author, and they're at Martha's Vineyard and they're sipping cocktails, and he's throwing them off. He's like, yeah, everybody's got one in them. You know, he said, that's not, you're not doing anything. Let's see what your second one looks like. So I remember that, and I was like, okay, let me let them know that this isn't a hobby for me, that I'm real about this. Right. So I would say keep going.
Gotcha. What is your favorite aspect of becoming an author?
Joe, you're asking me these great questions. My favorite aspect of becoming an author really is just sharing. It gives you the ability to share with more people than you can talk to. You know, you asked about what was one of the things that inspired me to write From Fear to Faith, a Survivor Story, and I talked to you about the desire to want to help, but there was a more, I won't call it selfish, but there was a more closer to home, what's the word I'm looking for, catalyst for that, or inspiration behind that, and that was when I made it through and everybody saw my weight drop and they wanted to know what happened. I told them, well, I just came through this situation, and I would lift my shirt to show them the scar, and they were like, oh, why didn't you tell anybody? And so I had so many people asking me about that experience, and I'm like, I don't have enough hours in a day to tell this story over and over to everybody. So let me get this book started. So that was kind of how I started too. Gotcha.
And you kind of touched on it, but I just want to ask the question, what or who has been your greatest inspiration during your, writing your books and all the other things that you do? I know you do real estate, you're an author, there's a couple other things that you do. You have your podcast, you have your YouTube channel. I mean, you have a lot going on. So who or what has been your greatest inspiration? Keep you going?
There's a couple. I don't want to sound cliche by saying this first one, but anybody, God, okay, the Creator, the Almighty. I feel like all of us, each of us was created for a purpose. And I feel like I'm operating in my purpose right now. And for me to not operate in my purpose is for me to be a broken piece of equipment, like a piece of equipment that's not doing what it was designed or created to do. And we know what we do with broken equipment. If we can't fix it, we discard it. So one of my inspirations is the Creator himself. I'm like, what was I created to do? This is what I was created to do. This is the gifts that were given to me, that were poured into me. I'm very good at it. I like doing it. Let me get out of my own way and do it. So my first inspiration is him. I want to please him because I feel like he's the source of all of my creative talent, juices, abilities. He did it to serve his own purpose. I'm just a tool, a vessel. So that's my number one inspiration. My number two inspiration is my parents.
Right.
My parents, I feel like we didn't have a lot growing up, Joe. I'm number 2 of 6. In my earliest beginnings, we lived in a 2-bedroom triplex in the basement section of a 2-bedroom triplex in Long Beach, New York. So you imagine a 1-bedroom, you got your mom and daddy and the youngest of the children there, and then in the other one, you got the other ones. And so we would sleep. I'm at one side of the bed. I might be at the head. My brother might be at the foot. Well, he was older, so he slept at the head of the bed. I'm at the foot of the bed, and you trying to get his stinky feet out of your nose or whatever, and just so they put so much. They constantly drove home when I was a kid. Matt, you're smart. You're a smart kid. Work hard. Be a model student. Do your homework. You may not be able to compete with other people in areas of athletics. Maybe we were welfare kids. I'm not ashamed to say that. We're welfare kids. We got the food stamps, the check twice a month, whatever. And my dad would say, hey, listen, we may not have the money that your classmates have. I was bused to the end of town where all of the people that had money went, their children went there. So he said, well, where you level the playing field is by outperforming people in the classroom. Absolutely. So be better. So I said to myself, I always want my parents to look and say, I'm proud of him. He did it. He listened to everything we were telling him to do. I'm proud of him. And I got one more inspiration. I know she's probably gonna see this, so I'm gonna say it. My wife puts her foot in my behind if it looks like I'm slacking. She's been like that. I met her at 17, Joe. She was 18. And she's just been keeping her foot in my behind if it looks like I'm slacking. Absolutely. So that's my third inspiration, and that one's automatic. I don't even have a choice in it. I mean, when something's kicking you in the behind, you're gonna get it done. So, and
that's extremely important when you're trying to do something in life. Having that person that's behind you, especially your spouse. When you know how it is when you're married, and things could go whatever. But it's excellent that y'all have that type of relationship, that she pushes you. She's been by your side. I read your book. I saw everything that she did for you in your book, kept inspiring you, her the little things that she would tell you, whisper in your ear when things got kind of, here or there. But that's absolutely excellent, man, to have a spouse like that. So, Joetta, I know you're going to see this, so, hey, you did a good job. Well, how do you define success?
I'm going to simplify it, and it may sound cliche again, but to me, success is accomplishing your goals, accomplishing the goals that you set out to do. No one can define what is successful to you. No one can define your measure of success. It's not a sporting event. Somebody might say, well, success is what Tom Brady did yesterday, winning the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes wasn't successful, he lost. But how did he define success? So to me, success is you setting a goal and you achieving it. What is your personal goal? And a lot of times in life, what happens is you may not achieve your goal by a certain time. So people will look at you as being unsuccessful. But as long as you don't give up, to me, success is not giving up and continuing to go for it. So that's how I define success. I often tell people, and this is a little bit ethereal, maybe this is out there for some people, but this is the way my mind works. I don't believe we're here for time. I believe we're here for purpose. And people disagree with me on the whole. I believe in reincarnation. I don't believe this is the first time we've been here. I don't believe this is the last time we're going to be here. So to me, it's not a sprint. And I know this was big years ago with the whole Nipsey Hussle thing or whatever. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. There's a lot of truth to that. Finish the race. Finish the race. That's success. Success is finishing the race. And that's all tied into goal setting and achieving your goal. And then the other part of success, Joe, I want to add in there, sometimes we're so focused on the goal and the end goal that we don't appreciate the moments that it takes to get there.
Absolutely.
It's the journey that's all of the good stuff happens on the journey.
Right.
You want to experience there's two ways you can get to California. You can go to Charlotte Douglas International, get on a plane and fly to LA, or you can drive cross country. That person that drives cross country, they're gonna have a richer story to tell on that person that flew on that plane.
Absolutely, and I tell people this all the time, and I've said it many times on my show. Everybody thinks there's an elevator to get to the top, and they don't realize if you take the stairs, it's gonna be a much more sweeter journey.
Yes.
If you take the stairs to get to that, because like you said, you're gonna have a much better story to tell once you reach there.
That's right. And the other analogy with those stairs is your legs are going to be a little bit stronger than that person that got on that elevator.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. So with everything that you got going on, what motivates you? What keeps you motivated? Is your why? What's that drive? What is it that keeps you motivated?
Oh, this is going to go back to this is going to make what I just said sound contradictory, but time. There's this song that I forget the commercial, but I hear it I see it sometimes. The guys go, "We got a long way to go and a short time to get there."
Oh, Smoking Man?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That
one of my favorite shows.
I love that show back in the day. I did too.
I'm sorry, one of my favorite movies.
Movies. Yeah. Okay. Well, there was a series that they spun off of that too. I remember back in the day. Burt Reynolds was in it. There was a series they spun off of it too. But anyway, time. And I know that sounds contradictory because I just said I feel like we're here for purpose and not a time. But the thing is, because we live in this realm, you always ask yourself, am I going to get to finish what I started? So the thing that keeps me motivated is this need to finish whatever it is I start. My dad used to say, boy, don't get up and go get another plate until you finish what's on your plate. I don't care how good that piece of chicken was. You got some peas and some mashed potatoes and peas left on there. If you want another piece of chicken, you're going to have to finish some mashed potatoes and peas first.
Right.
So it's time. Am I going to get to finish everything I started out to do?
Absolutely. Where do you get your entrepreneurial spirit from? Did you get it from were your parents entrepreneurs? I know you talked about them being, you all being poor, but were they entrepreneurs struggling, trying to make it?
I like that.
Where did you get your entrepreneurial
I like that. So I like that. You're digging in now. You're peeling back the layers. I like that. My dad, I tell people I was raised by a group of alpha males. They were all alphas, so you were going to be tough growing up in my family. Your uncle, your grandfather, your dad, these were hard men.
Right.
And you saw them get up early, and you saw them, they had hands with that calloused. And
you don't see that nowadays with
you don't.
I hate to say it, but with the millennial generation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, it's the technology, everything's at your fingertips. My dad, he worked so many different jobs. He was a sanitation worker in New York. Then he worked at the fish market. And one of the things he would do is he would always take whatever his skill set was that he was doing on his job and use that to earn side money. So he would get up early in the morning. If he had to be at work at 7, he'd get up at 5 and go shovel driveways. He knew that people didn't want to get out in the cold and shovel the driveway. He had a route. Him and my uncles, they would go shovel driveways. They would go catch fish. And then because they were skilled at working at the fish market, they would clean their fish and go and sell fish. My grandmother, she used to bake cakes and sell cakes by the slice. She used to sell ice cream cones, 1 scoop for 25 cents, two scoops for 50 cents. If you wanted a sugar cone versus the regular cone, it was 25 cents extra. So she used to sell baked pies and sell them. She would sell chicken plates. My other uncle, he used to make snow cones. So my dad, he used to drive his little van around Long Island selling fish all day. And so I would just look and see them, and I'm like, I want to get into that. So my first job actually wasn't a job. I was 12 years old, and me and my cousin, we would get up and catch the bus, go over to the next town, and stand in front of the supermarket. This was in the days where people had paper bags, and we got there early in the morning because we knew that's when the little old rich ladies used to go shop first thing in the morning so they get deals. We stand in front of that store and ask them if they needed help carrying their bags back to the car, and they would give us tips for carrying their bags. So that entrepreneurial spirit has just been from there, from childhood watching my parents.
And it was just basically from exposure.
Exposure.
Because had you not been exposed to it, like you said, you could have gone a different path.
Mm-hmm,
so, and you hit on a little bit about, what your father instilled in you and your parents instilled in you. So it's all about exposure. And you got to get out there and expose yourself. And that's what it's all about. These success stories we're talking about, because everybody I talk to, when they're talking about success, you don't have to be a millionaire to be successful, but it's exposure. They were exposed to different things instead of sitting back being in, how some of our folks in our culture, all we know about is going to the beach. Mm-hmm. All we know about is going to a party. Mm-hmm. But we limit ourselves by not being exposed to things. So that's great that you were exposed to a lot of different things. If you wrote another book about yourself, and I know there's probably one in the works about your experiences and everything, what would you name it and why? Or have you picked out a name yet?
Oh, I got one, and I got to tell you, I'm real funny about not giving a taste of the cake when it's before it comes out of the oven. But I won't tell you about that one. Let me skip ahead, and to answer that question, if I were to write another one past this one about myself, what would I name it and why? Gosh, I would probably name it "Don't Give Up." I would probably name it "Don't Give Up," and I would probably give examples of situations where. I kind of wouldn't make it about me. I would give examples of situations where I saw people, I changed their names, but I give examples of situations where I saw people who gave up, and then I contrast those with people who didn't give up to show you the importance of how maybe going that one extra mile. I'll tell you a quick story, Joe. There was a series that I watched on Netflix some years ago. My wife and I watched this, and it was about these people getting dumped in the wilderness in Alaska, about 60 miles away from civilization. And they wanted to see who's going to persevere. And the last person that quit, had she just stayed, she woke up that morning, she says, I can't take it anymore, guys. I don't know how much longer we're going to be doing this. Joe, if she had just stayed one more day, they came into civilization and she would have made it to the end of the show. But she quit. It literally, she could have walked, I think they walked another 2 miles. She gave up with 2 miles of walking left to go. So I would name it "Don't Give Up." Don't give up. You don't ever know when your breakthrough is. You got to keep going. You got to live in the moment and enjoy the journey and say, you know what? This doesn't feel good, but what can I learn from it?
Exactly. And you talk about not giving up. That may be the next book that you write. Going along with that, what sacrifices have you had to make to become successful in becoming an author, or were there any sacrifices?
Yes.
I know with me doing the things that I do, it may be time with my daughter, it could be time with my friends that I have to give up, or going on a trip. Were there any sacrifices that you had to make?
What you sacrifice is you end up sacrificing time. Sometimes you sacrifice relationships because people don't understand exactly what it is that you're doing, or what you believe that in your heart or within your spirit that you were commissioned to do. And because it may not be in alignment with how they see you, or they may be stuck in the past that you guys had. Like, hey man, we used to go out and do this all the time. What do you mean you're doing this now? Or, hey man, you used to have this mindset with regards to these things, politics or social issues or whatever. Why are you over here now? And so you end up sometimes by going forward and living out your purpose, you sacrifice. The biggest sacrifice in a lot of cases is relationships. Now there was some financial sacrifices because I had a very healthy salary when I was at Microsoft. Very healthy. Very, very healthy sacrifice. But Joe, I'll tell you, this brings my mind back to an earlier question you asked, what was my motivation for doing it? I had a very comfortable salary that I won't say when I was at Microsoft, but I said to myself, you know what? As I was getting older and watching my wife's parents and watching my parents age, I said to myself, you know what? I wouldn't be where I am today if they hadn't sacrificed so much for me to get here. And I'm not good. My mother still lives in the projects. I'm not ashamed to say that. My mother lives in the projects in New York. And I said to myself, I hit a point where I said, you know what? I'm not happy making this salary and me and my wife are comfortable and my mom is still struggling. And I send her money and stuff, but I'm like, if there's any opportunity for me to drastically increase my wealth and my financial situation such that everybody wants to buy their mother house.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody.
Absolutely.
I can't do this on this salary. As comfortable as it is, I can't do this on this salary. I got to give all of this up and use my talent to see if I can get a big enough piece of pie so that now I can give my mother a comfortable existence for the rest of her days. And my prayer, I get teary-eyed talking about it. I'm not going to get teary-eyed on this camera. I'm not going to do it. But my prayer is always, periodically, I pray this prayer. I say, Father, my mother has been so good to me and my brothers and sister, and she's given up so much of her own life. My mother was, Mommy, I'm sorry if you're watching this and you hear this, I'm putting too much of your business out there. My mother had her first child at 15. I was her second at 16. And so my mother, all she's known, she went from being a little girl to raising children. Right. And she did a phenomenal job, if you ask me. I got a successful brother in California, got another one in Charlotte, one in Virginia. My sister's doing good. I got another brother who's, he's trying to overcome some personal challenges, but I mean, everybody goes through that, but he still had the right things poured into him. And so I said, Father, if you can bless me to be a blessing to my mother, I want her to eat the fat. I want her to eat off the fat of the land before she leaves here. I don't want her to know all struggle her whole life. If you can use me for that, use me however you will. That was my prayer. And so I knew for that to be answered, I couldn't just keep working at my corporate job. Absolutely. Because they want you to jump through hoops and do all this other stuff. Right.
And you had to go, like you said, you had to jump out there. You had to leap off that cliff.
Yep.
Take that leap of faith, and obviously it's paying off for you. And that's a lot of times that's what we are afraid to do. It's that fear that holds us back, that don't want to help, have us go forward because of that fear of failure. But that didn't stop you.
It did stop me,
and
Joe.
That's what people have to understand. You're gonna make mistakes.
You're gonna make mistakes.
You're gonna mess up. Yep. But that's where you learn from.
That's exactly right.
You got to push forward with it. So that's great that you did that, man. Like I said, I mean, I look at you all's office and I see all of the things that you've done. Everything that you've done, you award-winning author of 3 books, and I'm sure there's going to be 4, 5, 6, 8, whatever comes a little bit later. But I mean, you're doing it, man. That's why I'm so glad that you allowed me to, interview you. So we put that out there, give everybody these little tidbits, pick your brain a little bit about it, and it's definitely going to help someone, man. So. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
But with your books, how do you market or advertise your books?
Joe, it's tougher these days because so if Zuckerberg is watching this, you got to fix your game, man. Tighten your game up. Once upon a time before Facebook went public, it was a lot easier to share information about your business. And so a lot of people became overnight successes over on social media prior to the days of these algorithms listening for certain keywords.
Right.
And this isn't a secret. Anybody watching this will know this. And anybody that's been through this will know this. Social media, it's almost like they want you to buy advertising now. Mm-hmm. And so
they force you to.
They force you to.
Yeah.
My problem is when you go back and you look at your return on investment, if you're not even breaking even, at some point you got to switch it up and do something else. So it's a tough thing for me right now. I mean, any independent author, you're relying on the tools. Some friends of mine have told me I need to get into Amazon marketing. That's something I haven't taken advantage of yet. But you're going to have to pay to play. And I've paid to play before and haven't gotten a good return on investment. So I've just gone back old school, Joe, and just been doing word of mouth and direct messaging people, text messages. Hey, I created a website, mdtalford.com, and I try to show people my writing there so people can go and look at my blog posts and stuff like that. But it's tough because I'm not willing to put the money that I put into it before and not get the return on investment.
Absolutely.
So it's tough.
Absolutely. How do you generate new ideas for your books? What do you do? Do you go to the mountains or?
I go out my door. With nonfiction, it just depends on what subject matter you want to write about. A lot of it's based in opinion. I mean, every writer is you're giving an opinion on something if you're not, unless you're documenting historical facts or something scientific or whatever. You give an opinion or you're creating something. As far as creativeness, that's kind of how Stuck in an Elevator. Stuck in an Elevator started with an internet direct messaging conversation with a friend of mine who didn't know it, but she became a muse. And we were talking about a political situation with a couple of high-level political entities. I don't want to say their name because I don't want them saying, you used my name or whatever. But I spun a whole story out of a conversation I had with a friend. So, when you're creative, sometimes you can get inspiration from looking at a butterfly or just standing in the grocery store and hearing two people argue about something. And you're like, whoa, I can build a story around that. So inspiration is all around us. You just got to open yourself and be willing to just take it in.
Yeah, just let it out.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. If you walk through the graveyard right now and you wanted to find someone in a graveyard to wake them up, to get inspiration from someone from history, who would that be?
Ooh, graveyard. One of the most inspirational figures in my life, really, I feel like I sort of resonate with, really, is the ancient Israelite King David. If I could find his grave and wake him up, David to me was somebody who wasn't perfect, but he had a heart for at least trying to do the right thing. Now you might take that Bathsheba story and say, oh man, he saw Shorty taking a new bath, and was like, yo, I gotta have her, but I can't have her if she's married. So I know her husband is a soldier in my forces, and I know he can't fight. So let me send him to the front of the line to get him out. That was foul. That was probably the low light in his life. But if you look at everything else, he always had a heart for righteousness. He said he knew he was anointed to be the king, but he was respecting Saul. So he said, I'm going to respect my elders, and I'm not, even though I know that perhaps I was anointed to be the king, I want this guy to know I ain't got no problem with him. I ain't, they blowing me up saying, Saul killed his thousands and David killed his 10,000s. And, I went, I slew the giant, but I just did what I felt like I had to do. I would love to just sit down for an hour with him and just talk to him about maybe some of the stuff that he went through that wasn't documented in the Bible. He's just a very interesting character to me.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Well, listen, I want to ask this before we close out.
Okay.
But I'm curious to know, what's next for you? What's next for Matt Talford? What's next for Matt Talford?
Well, aside from 2 books that I'm working on this year, I got one that's about to come out that is it's sort of a modern day Proverbs. I've been working on that since 2002. I got my first journal entry in 2002. So this book is about 19 years in the making, and a lot of people wouldn't believe that, but this is just words of wisdom that come to me spiritually, and I write them down so that I can remember it. I can go back and look at it when I'm challenged. I call it a sort of modern day Proverbs because the wisdom that's in the biblical book of Proverbs that's like the meat for me. There's so much learning, so much applicable wisdom there that I said, hey, you know what? We need an updated version, not updated, but we need a modern version of that, because there are wise men all around us. And I'm like, hey, if you go through, if wisdom occurs to you, that didn't just occur to you for you. That's something that somebody else can benefit from. So I got that coming out next. And then there's the follow-up to Stuck in an Elevator. Everybody's asking me, where is it? And I'm like, tell some of your friends to read the first version before let's cross that bridge when we get to it. But I left a cliffhanger at the end of that book, and people are mad at me. They were mad at me when they read it then. They're like, you can't do this. I absolutely did it. I left a cliffhanger. So I got a new book, Stuck in an Elevator has a sequel coming. I won't say the title, though I know it here. Yeah. But there's a sequel coming to Stuck in an Elevator. Gotcha.
And just in closing, how can people find you? How can they find your book? If they want to purchase your books, what's the process of that?
They can go to Amazon.com and search for Matt D. Talford. That's my author name. First name is Matthew. My mother named me Matthew, but Matt D. Talford just sounded cooler when I was coming up with a pen name. So search for Matt D. Talford at Amazon. You can also go to my website, www.talfordarts.com, and click on the book, the section called, or the collection for books. Get my books there. Right now, I got a lot of people upset with me that From Fear to Faith, a Survivor Story has been sold out in paperback, and I want anybody watching this to know that we're working on the getting that to come in hardcover, because some people want a hardcover book. So we're looking at late May, early June to have paperback and more prints available for From Fear to Faith, a Survivor Story. But Stuck in an Elevator will be available in print in March. So that's about it. And you can follow me on Instagram at Matt D. Talford. My YouTube channel, I'm always dropping nuggets on my YouTube channel. Some of them are controversial to some people, but what is the world without controversy? It's boring, right? So you can find me on YouTube at Matt Talford. And last but not least, I think I said my website is my other website, where my blog is, where I'm always giving away free words of wisdom or just inspiration, www.mdtalford.com. And Joe, if I can say one more thing, I'm burning to say this. Anybody who's not seen that movie, it's an old movie now, but it's Batman, The Dark Knight Rises. That was another catalyst for me getting out there doing it. If you remember, there's a scene in there where he's got to get out of this cylindrical prison, and there's these steps going up, and then at some point he can't step, he's got to jump. He tried it with the safety rope. Spoiler alert, he tried it with the safety rope and tried to jump, and then he fell and ended up breaking his back. So the very mechanism that was supposed to keep him from dying broke his back. And so he asked the old man in there, and he said, hey, has anybody ever gotten out of this prison? He said, yes. There was one little boy that got out of here. He said, how did he do it? He said he didn't take a rope. He was willing to die to get out of here.
Wow.
And I remember that, and I said, okay, when I go and leave corporate America, I got to go all in. I can't keep one leg over here and say, if it doesn't work out, I can go back and get my job, because then I wasn't serious about leaving anyway.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to leave that to anybody. Hopefully that inspires somebody. That inspired me to keep going, to just cut it all off and just go all in. You got to go all in if you want to make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, listen, man, like I said, thank you again for allowing me to come here. I know your words of wisdom, your words in general, just going to help someone. So again, thank you so much, man.
Joe, thank you. It was an honor. It was an honor to be your guest. It was an honor. Thank you, sir.